a case study groups?
Good evening.
Good evening.
How's everybody?
Good. Can I go ahead and ask a question while we're waiting?
Sure. I'm going to get to, just give me 1 second. Let me see who this is on the phone.
Okay.
Let me guess, case study groups.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Well, I've got everybody's name listed, and so we will use the same groups that you used last semester.
Okay.
Those will become your case study group. I went back to look in your shell from last semester to see who your groups were, but they had used that shell to do this semester's, and so they had this semester's people's names in the groups rather than last semester. They're not supposed to do that, but they did. So that's on me. I'll have to have a scathing conversation with somebody about that. But, Dr. Stedman sent me his for last night, but I didn't have time to have Dr. Revis send me hers, or she didn't have the time. So anyway, so I was just going to ask. That'd be our first task for the evening. I already have that dialed up, so let me share my screen. Welcome, everybody. This is Mels 603, and on the screen there, you see Dr. Joshua Sane. He's going to be our resident principal expert this semester. Dr. Sane just left the principalship, central office person, cutting edge, knows what's going on. So I use my coaches, or we use our coaches. We collaborate a little more. So Dr. Sane will be teaching some classes. He has 4 classes he'll be teaching this semester. I grade my own work and give my own feedback on the evidence work, and we do that in our class shell. And so, but if you need additional help, I'll send you to Dr. Sane. But he is much more valuable than just to be a grader. So that's more my level of work. So let me go over here. So let me do an edit. Okay. All right. So Michelle, who's in your group?
It was Naima, myself, Kristen, Derek.
You need to give me last names, looks like.
Okay. Branch, Brunson, Carroll, Crockett, Davis.
Crockett.
To C. Davis.
Do what now?
It was Branch all the way to Christina Davis.
So Michelle, Kristen, William, and Christina. So that's group 1, right?
Naima, did you get?
Where's Naima?
Branch.
The very top.
Got it.
Okay.
All right, the very top. All right, so that's all group 1. And I'll make this a little clearer. So I see Allison is with us. Allison, who was in your group?
Dr. Lamb, I can go next if she's not ready.
All right. So Kim, all right.
Yep, it's Kim. It's the next Kelly, Andrelicia, Lana, and then Michael Jones is also in our group. We did not have Everlyn in our group.
Okay. Excellent.
Everlyn was in my group. This is Allison. It was me and Everlyn and Kimberly Sparks. And there was, I think, I think that she was going to split us up because there were just 3 of us left in our group. One lady had left, but whatever, that's up to you.
Okay. So 1, 2, 3, 3, 2.
I'm fine either way.
And then this would be group 4, I'm assuming then.
Correct. It was myself, Jackie Turner, and William Jones.
Excellent. That looks good to me. That's pretty simple. That's the easiest thing I've done all day. Thank you. And that's going to be real important, as we'll talk about here in a few minutes when we talk about case studies. I see the time is here, so let's see who we got. Welcome to Mels 603. This is C4. This is the Wednesday section. Now, please don't be confused. I put the C2 Tuesday session, I put their class schedule and their link in there as well. Now, that doesn't mean I expect you to attend both of them, and that I don't expect that you'll just jump back and forth. But if you know that you're going to miss a Wednesday night and you would prefer to be live, you can come to Tuesday night. We'd love to have you. Or you can watch the video later. You know, I'll post the video tonight. But I've separated you for the purpose of we get to know you better. We want to spend more time individually with you. And also when we do now case studies are kind of the heart of this course. Yes, you do evidence work right along with just like you did before. We'll do the OMA and the skip and start the cap. But now a lot more of that's going to be on you, and it's going to be a lot faster paced. It's going to be grab it and go kind of stuff. You know, we're going to move into another gear on that. We're not going, you know, remember in life, we could all do better if we had more time. Let's not spend all our time on evidence work this semester. These case studies are marvelous. And this case studies give you the opportunity as a group to expand your repertoire in terms of virtual, going from being able to just communicate virtually to be able to communicate to develop and produce a product, which is more like the real world of work. So what each of you are going to do in your teams, each case study night, all 4 teams will present. You'll take turns going early. The first person on the list, of course, will be the first Zoom master, will be the first leader of the group, but you will put together a PowerPoint. If you're unsure what it looks like, I have a video. Let me share that. So if you look under tonight's lesson in Zoom session 1, you'll see I post the videos, but if you'll look under, I think is it 4 or 5? Case study 1 is week 4. Look, there's one from the fall. That was the night 1. So you get to see that maybe it won't be the best choice to go first, but the one that goes first gets the first whipping. But after that, it's not too bad. But if you will follow the directions, if you will read these things that I have for you here, and understand the case, and maybe watch a video and see what their PowerPoint looked like and what they did well and what they didn't do well, that might help you with yours. But let's look at our weekly schedule. On weeks, you will present your case studies on week 4, week 7, week 10, and week 14. That's all we'll do that night. Is I'll turn the mic over to you, and you'll present. You'll rotate about which team goes first. But make sure that you read all your resources, understand what your responsibility is. Everybody will upload their same group presentation. Now, you also get to do a half-page reflection of the process. And that's where you tell me, Dale didn't help us. He didn't show up to the meetings. He didn't do his part, or we learned a lot from this. You can tell me anything you want to about the process. You get a half-page reflection. So what you do is go over here when it's time for, in another week or so, when it's time to start preparing for your first case study, you simply come over here to case study materials, case study 1. I've got a place for you to put your PowerPoint. Now, everybody can't just one person put it in. Everybody's got to put their group PowerPoint in if you want credit for it. And then you got your personal reflection of how the process went. And here's some things that you might want to read that go along with it. And here's the case itself. And you can go to that week on week 4 There might be some additional things there that might help you a little bit. Look at there, there's some additional stuff. And so our case studies are current, they're relevant, they're issues that are really relevant to operating a school. Please remember that you did academics and personnel last semester, where, you know, the academic side of school. We're doing operations, we're doing law and finance this semester. Now, all of it has got to support the academic program, but we're working on how you actually have and run school this semester. The actual reality of running school, the clinical, the real, the practical. That's why we always have a current practitioner with us that tells us how it is today. And that will be Dr. Sain's responsibility. As you saw highlighted in green 4 times this semester, he's going to lead our class because he has relevant and current information about the course material at that time. He's going to do technology, social media, and cyber issues. That's very relevant today with phones and all that's going on, and he's on the cutting edge of that. He also handles exceptional children. He's going to cover that night. He's going to talk about staff contracts and hiring and, you know, the world since COVID, you know, what you got to do these days. And then he's going to do some of these academic issues, students' records, copyright laws, those kinds of things which catch us and call us out a lot. So we have an expert with us. We'll muddle through with me. But please remember that the purpose of this semester is to teach you how to run a school. And so sometimes people will ask me, I'll stop my share for a second, is the point of the OMA and the point of this semester to learn how to build a master schedule, a duty roster, and a supervision schedule? And I say no. The purpose of this semester is how to build a legal master schedule, duty roster, and supervision schedule. Because if they're not legal, you'll lose your house. Please remember, since 1992, school administrators are tort liable. That means if you harm somebody, intentionally, unintentionally, doesn't matter whether it's, you know, there's 3 forms of negligence: misfeasance, malfeasance, and nonfeasance. Those are the three functions of negligence. Doesn't matter which one you choose of those, whether you didn't mean to, or knew better and didn't, or didn't know better, or just didn't do what you were supposed to. If you're found guilty of negligence, if you harm somebody, if you post a, you know, if you don't have an adequate supervision schedule and people get hurt, or if you don't give people the planning that they're entitled to, or those kinds of things, you can be sued and you can lose your house. Now, I can't stop you from being sued. The first thing, you know, full disclosure, this course will not stop you from getting sued, but my job is to make sure that when you get sued, and you probably will, that you win. We're just like the old Oakland Raiders with Al Davis, just win, baby. That's our job, is make sure that if we do get sued, we win. We don't lose our house. I hate to be that blunt. I hate to be that mercenary, but this is a law course, folks. This is grown people stuff now. We're going to be talking about this semester. This is not pie in the sky. Oh, everything's wonderful, butterflies and unicorns. This is the real world. It gets ugly, especially when you get an EC, especially when you start talking about due process and kids out of school, expulsions, those kinds of things. It gets ugly. It gets legal. You talk about terminating teacher contracts and firing people. It gets ugly. This is grown people stuff this semester, folks. I'm just going to tell you right now. It's not always going to be pretty. It's not always going to be like, you know, oh, everything's wonderful and everybody loves everybody. No, that's not true. Sometimes people will want to actually shoot you, or gouge you, or poke your eyes out. That's the nature of this business. That is the nature of this business. So we're going to talk about real stuff this semester. But the point is not to scare you or run you off. The point is to have you prepared so you won't lose your house. All right, let me share my screen. Let's go start with the course overview and run through these things as we go here. All right, so welcome to 603. That's me, Dr. Sain. He's there. You see him. Here's your grading system. There's your Zoom case study groups right there. Everything's good there. Make sure you fill out your verification both here and in your 698 shell. Now your 698 shell is set up to put things in it, but don't unless I tell you. Again, you will upload all of your tasks for review of the OMA and Skip with me. And if there's a problem that I can't fix, I'll move you over to Dr. Sane with his shell. But otherwise, you work on this one. We expect that there's not going to be problems. That y'all have made it through 601. Y'all should be experts on the evidence business by now. Here's your textbook. Here's your class schedule, the days that we'll meet. Refer to your weekly schedule for the topics that we're going to be doing. And we've already had the town hall, so let's refer to our weekly schedule. You've already seen it. What it has on it is what week, what topics we're covering, what resources you'll need, including your reading. This is your discussion board. This is your assignment for the week. And this is where we are in terms of your evidence work with the OMA, which one we'll start. Now, you notice you've got 2 weeks to do task 1 of the OMA. So when I cover it in a few minutes and you're saying, oh God, that's a lot of stuff. Yeah, you get 2 weeks. So don't worry about that. We'll cover that in just a minute. But here are your activities. Now, your assignments are all due by 9 o'clock on Sunday. If you go into Monday, I don't really care. And if you go into Tuesday, I don't really care. But don't come back to class next Wednesday not having done your work. Make sure that by next Tuesday night, next Wednesday morning, whenever, that you have done that week's assignment. Now, our assignments are not read a chapter, write a paper assignments. They're coming and going to and fro. So the first one, you got to go and ask your school administration, where's the school? Where's our school emergency plans? Is the crisis box under the front desk of the counter of the school where it's legally required to be? What's in your emergency plan? Are there updated faculty rosters? Is there updated student rosters? Are they in there? Are there evacuation routes? All those things that are supposed to be there, are they there? If you don't know what's supposed to be there, read your law book on emergency plans. What's supposed to be in there. You can also, I've got a thing here, by the way. Let me go over here under, see if I've got it under Zoom session 1. Zoom session 2. Yeah, right here tells you what your emergency plan crisis box. If you don't know, I've got it under week 2. If you're stumped and you don't know what's supposed to be in it, just click on that button and it'll tell you what's supposed to be in that box. Now, one of the things that I used to have, I'll stop my share. One of the things that I used to do along with that question is I would put, how long did it take for your administrator to find your emergency plan and crisis box? I don't have to ask that anymore. That's unfortunate. We had the first grader shooter teacher this week in Newport News. All the school shootings that go on, all the crises that go on now. There was a time when people didn't even know they had to have an emergency plan. Then if they had one, they couldn't find it. You better believe everybody's got it now. And it's on most everybody's on their phone. They've got an app. But now one of the things that I wanted to say about this first assignment, it should be in paper, it should be in a box. Because cyber terrorists know the first thing to do if you want to disable communication is they'll take the internet and and virtual communication down. You need to have all your plans and all your lists, your rosters in writing. They need to be updated Monday morning of every week. Student rosters need to be updated in that crisis box with your emergency plan. Yeah, you need to make sure that's a good one, Angelica. It needs to be on your phone saved, where if your internet goes out, you can still get it. And if you're for a school, it needs to be a hard copy required by law in that front office under that desk. Be other places too, but don't just rely on the virtual world. We've seen some cyber attacks lately on schools where they shut everything down, no communication. When people's phones didn't work, didn't have any internet, then the place was just blinded. They didn't have anything written down in paper. So make sure that plan as required, and that there's student rosters in there, so we know where the kids are supposed to be. You know, we had one this past semester. I think Dr. Sane and I had one. They said that the faculty list was from 2012, something ridiculous like that, and said they don't even think that even one of those people worked at the school anymore. That they had updated the student list, but nobody remembered that, hey, you got to update the faculty list, or all of a sudden, if it says all these kids are in Miss Green's room, what if we don't have a Miss Green? What do we do then? And so, yes, we actually had one last semester. I swear, they said the faculty hadn't been updated in 10 years. That they just thought it was, the students. Yes, that kind of stuff's got to be updated, folks. We got to know. Now, when we talk about evacuation plans, there's supposed to be 3. I'm trying to count back how many superintendents in Charlotte Mecklenburg. Let's see. They just got rid of one. The one before him, the one before Ernest. What was that guy's name? Clayton, whatever. They fired him because of what happened at Butler. What happened at Butler High School? They had a shooting, unfortunately. I'm not making light of this. But on 3 different platforms, they put out 3 different, for the emergency evacuation plan, there are 3 for every school. They put a different one on each of the media. And so it was just a complete disaster. You have a on-campus evacuation, like out your ball field. Like if there's a gas leak in your building or something like that, you go there. Then you have one that you can walk to. That's the church next door right there on 52 next to Butler High School. And then you have one where you wait and buses come pick you up and they transport you like to Bojangles Arena or the Coliseum or someplace like that. Well, they put out all 3 of those. They didn't understand that you had to pick one, so they just put all 3 of them out on media. Well, which one was it? Well, that nobody knew. So some of the kids were on the ball field, some were at the church, and some were over at Bojangles Arena watching the basketball team practice. What a disaster. So you got to have, a short, medium, and long distance plan in your box, but you got to have some way to communicate that to people. That we're going to do plan A, which means out on the ball field, we're going to, and everybody's got to know that kind of thing. So that's what you're going to be doing this week, is figuring out your emergency system for your school. I hate to be this blunt, but that's the first thing we have to worry about is our safety and security now. So we have to, very first thing we're going to deal with is our security, our safety plan, our crisis box. If something goes bad, we can't go crawl in a hole and hide. We can't wet our pants at the first sign of trouble. We got to hold our water. And part of that is being planned and prepared. Everybody's going to be looking to school administration. If that old skit on Saturday Night Live from years ago, you ought to Google it. Martin Short, when 60 Minutes showed up unexpectedly. And he's sitting there sweating, just, water's pouring off of him. You can't be that person when 60 Minutes shows up, when there's a crisis in your building. You can't be that person. Part of not being that person is being planned and prepared. So go find your plan, evaluate it, make sure that everything is there, it's supposed to be there. And the big thing is tell the truth. And if it's not what it needs to be, don't just share it with us. Share it with the site supervisor that has elected, that you work with. Hey, you don't have to put it on social media. What a bunch of buffoons over here. But you could share it back through the system that we need. This is concerning. We could do better on this. We're talking about people's lives here, and so that's going to be your first assignment, is that. So let me go back to our shell, and we'll work on through and see if there's anything else that I can answer. All right. So you've seen our weekly schedule. Discussion board is just those activities I just showed you, and you answer the questions. I will respond to each of your posts. I'll find something, and then I'll remind you at the end of, if I make any statements, I'll remind you what the takeaway was on each of these activities. It kind of summarizes the reading that you were to do with each of these. If you'll notice again, that there's reading that goes along with each of these. Now, we're not going to talk about the reading ever. That's just to frame your point of reference. But I'll remind you every time you post, I will remind you the takeaway from this activity was you were supposed to learn or see this. Again, this is an operations course. This is not theoretical. This is how we run school. All right. So that's where you'll get that's the weekly schedule. That's where you'll get your discussion board is for your weekly activities. Peer reviewing. Please remember, in this course, we do no virtual peer reviews. You're just going to write them up and you be brief about them. Don't be so wordy, but you're only going to do one of your team members for OMA pass 1, 2, and 3, and Skip pass 1, 2, and 3. So you will do 6 total for the entire semester. And please get to the point. Don't give them grammar tips. If they're missing something major, tell them. That's it. So you're kind of their second set of eyes, but don't sit and go through it line by line and tell them you needed a period here and apostrophe there. No, we're not going to do that. And so we're not going to get down in the weeds on punctuation and grammar. Big ticket items. If you see stuff that's missing, tell them. But again, you only have to peer review tasks 1, 2, and 3 of one person in your group. Doesn't have to be the same one every time for both the OMA and the Skip. We get to the CAP, you don't have to do any peer reviewing on the CAP. We're shifting our focus to our case studies. Now, our case studies, we've got one on grading, which is the biggest headache that principals ever had. And that's the one you'll deal with most of the time. We've got one on finances. We got one on LGBTQ or protected class. It doesn't matter whether they're that protected class of students. And we got one on exceptional children, which is going to be the bane of your existence. So that's why we have case studies that are most relevant to what you're going to experience in school each day. Again, if you're looking for something, I've got all of tonight's materials under here. If you're looking something for your, maybe for your weekly assignment, you might find it here. It's like Price's Box Emergency Plan. Okay. All right. Questions you have for me about the setup of the course? Everybody good so far? Excellent. I'm going to pause and catch my breath here. Dr. Sane, please introduce yourself and kind of tell us what you're going to be doing with us this semester.
Well, you've already set the bar kind of pretty high there. So I'm only half as good as what he said, but I'm Josh Sane. I was a special education teacher, middle and high school, and then was an assistant principal in Kannapolis City. And then for the past 3 years, I've been a director of academic support and learning for Lincoln County Schools, which is just to the west of Charlotte. And then about 2 months ago, got an opportunity to kind of do, and what I did in Lincoln County was basically MTSS, student behavior, gifted programming, and all the parent complaints, and then Title IX investigation. So a lot of the things that we'll be covering this year. But about a couple of months ago, I got an opportunity to kind of travel the nation and support districts with MTSS, working with curriculum associates. So I actually called Dr. Lamb and talked about it and decided to take that journey. So it's been exciting. It's different, but it's definitely already given me a bigger perspective of education throughout the Southeast and throughout the nation. And here's the most comforting, I don't know whether it's comforting or it's horrifying, but the problems that we face in North Carolina, every other state is facing. So sometimes we feel like we're alone here in this state and we maybe have the craziest legislator, but guess what? They're crazier. So, just, I guess that's comforting. But yeah, so basically, the classes that I'm going to teach are some of the things that I dealt with daily in Lincoln County, and then can dealt with them as a principal. So I look forward to it. You're going to enjoy Dr. Lamb. He will make you laugh. But the beauty of this class is it's real. He doesn't sugarcoat anything, and this is where this is the meat and potatoes of being an administrator. And it's funny, I was just sued. I haven't even had a chance to tell Dr. Lamb this, but 5 years since I was a principal, and I was just served papers because a parent is suing me for emotional negligence regarding a case that happened when I was a principal at an elementary school. Fortunately, I have all of my documentation. So we'll talk about that today. But that is and this will be the 4th lawsuit that has been brought against me. So it's going to happen. And this is the course where you'll be prepared. Because trust me, the law does not say, oh, you were just in your 6th week, we're going to give you a pass. So again, this is, all of your courses are meaningful, but this one will definitely help you keep your job for a long time. So
Thank you, Dr. Sain. Yeah. One of my jobs in CMS is I had to go to court when we got sued over EC or discipline all the time. And so I sat in the same seat so long that I wore that wooden bench out. It was in the shape of my behind. It looked like the seat on an old tractor. Somebody's getting sued all the time. If it's not you, it's somebody that you're responsible for, or somebody in your division, or somebody at your school. It's a constant thing. It's become a cottage industry. There are attorneys that make their entire living off of that. And so please understand that. Again, we're not henny pennying you here. This is real life. So let's talk about the evidence that's due this semester, the OMA. Now, here's the bad news. The OMA task 1 is really big. It's really long, takes a couple of weeks. It's not really that hard to figure out. It's just pulling all your information together. If you know where to look, it's not that bad. But here's the good news. OMA task 2 takes 30 minutes. That's right, I said 30 minutes. OMA task 2, because we had you, remember when you did the APTEL last semester with the professional growth plan, and we wouldn't let you do anything but an academic program, and you were all mad about that? Well, now you can go back and thank those people because you did it that way. If you read the directions for OMA task 2, it says you need to do a professional growth plan for an academic program. Well, duh, you just did one. So all you have to do is take APTEL tasks 1, 2, and 3, copy it, take the labels off for the APTEL, drop the ones in for the OMA, literally 30 minutes or less, just like dominoes, you have task 2 done. So task 1 is a little bit of a bear, putting it all together, but it's mostly just, it's just volume. It's not really that hard intelligence wise. So let's dive in and look at OMA task 1. Now I have created, one of the things that we do at Gardner Webb, we do a little work for school districts, and Dr. Sain helps me, and he's going to be doing a session with Thomasville City Schools on exceptional children coming up here in another month or so. But one of the things that we do at Gardner Webb is we go out and we work with school districts on many of the same topics that you do. So under Zoom session 1, I've got a master scheduling PowerPoint. And the beauty of it, and I've also got here, this is actually a slide from that PowerPoint, but talks about all the things that you need to round up and get together so that you can attempt to do OMA task 1. That's why I was talking about it's not hard work, it's just getting all this stuff gathered up. So what you're going to need, and again, this is in this PowerPoint, this master scheduling PowerPoint, we'll talk about it in a minute. Here are the things before you start task 1. If you'll go ahead and before you even read it, if you want to, round these things up. So Michelle Brunson raised her hand. All right, Michelle.
Sorry, I have a question. I work at a private school, so like the NCDPI report card and the EVOS we don't have. What do you think I should use in place of those?
You need to ask your, ask your school administration. So what we're looking for, that's a great question. So what we're looking for from the report card. So let's look at a report card. Let's look at a report card, and these are the things that you're going to need to ask your school administration about. Now, EVOS is the growth of your students. You know what EVOS is. That's value added. That's when we look at students to see if they made a year's growth or not. What teachers should be teaching what kids. That's the notion here, is we need to know which of your teachers gets growth. I mean, should Michelle be teaching the upper kids or the middle kids or the lower kids? Or should you be teaching this class or that class? We have a system in North Carolina called EVOS, and in South Carolina, it's called Student Learning Outcomes, that measures teachers' effectiveness with different subgroups of kids.
We don't really track that.
Well, I know.
One.
I get that, but you need to talk. That's why I said these are the things you need to talk to your administration about.
Okay.
How do they make decisions about what groups of kids are most appropriate for what teachers. They've got to have some kind of system, even if it's eeny, meeny, miny, mo.
We only have
a
one
system.
teacher per grade.
Well, then how do you, yeah, I get that then too. And
Okay.
so that one kind of takes care of itself, and you can just say that. But let's
Okay.
look at the state report card in South Carolina. I'm going to look at the North Carolina report card. And so, and these are the things that are on a report card that you got to round up. All right, so. All right, we're looking at New Hanover. We're going to look at Masonboro, where Dr. Hamilton works. Many of you met her last semester. She works with us, and so Masonboro's got an A. Isn't that impressive? All right, so here's what a state report card looks like, and this is the information that you need. Let me move this up out of the way. I mean, you can even look at your subgroup performance on it. We won't on that, but so here's what we're looking for. Did you meet academic growth? That's your EVOS score. Did you make growth or not as a school? Which teachers need to be with which one? So here's your growth score right here. That's EVOS. It's on the report card, and it's sent to you separately as a principal. Got growth here. You got your performance grade history. This school's an A. It's got its history of how well it's done while Dr. Hamilton has been there. It has EOG math, EOG reading. It has income and student readiness, percent economically disadvantaged. It has your math and reading performance. It has your science, and it has all of your benchmark goals, all your benchmark data, all of your EOG and EOC. Academically, everywhere you are, from every assessment that's given in the building. Test participation, students with disability. You got your teacher qualifications. How many of them have national boards? How many of them are highly effective? You've got all that stuff on your teachers. Your non-provisional emergency license. You've got your total students, average class size, suspension and expulsion rates, active crime and violence. Got all that stuff, chronic absenteeism, and you can even go in and pert it out by subgroup performance here if you want to. So that's the stuff that we want. And you saw how easy it is to figure it out where it is. South Carolina is the same way. Just Google South Carolina report card and get the report card for your school. If you don't have one, Google one like this. It's the same level that you teach at a private school. Go to your administrator and say, where do I get this information? That's why you get 2 weeks, because sometimes it's not as easy. Please don't tell me that I mean, what I'm talking about is, as a group, you need to understand that when you get to be a school administrator, it's not going to be as easy getting stuff as you think it is. It's not going to be as quick. Don't be one of those people when they go fishing, expect the fish just to jump in the boat. You got to do a little work, a little effort. I mean, that's the notion here is, and so, you need everything that's on this report card, because we're going to use it in some way in OMA task force. So that's what we're looking for, is the state report card. And then your EVOS data, it's right here on the report card. Some of it is reported, but whatever your district uses for growth. Does this teacher get growth with this kind of kid? I mean, that's what we're looking for. Certain subgroups, certain teachers are better, and just like in secondary, who gets to teach biology and who gets to teach chemistry? And please don't tell me, well, the person that's been there the longest gets to teach chemistry. That's a way to lose your job in a hurry. You got to learn, when you get to be a school principal, it's about talent, not about time. Doesn't matter how long they've been there. Who gets better scores? That's who needs to be teaching chemistry or biology. I mean, there's a pecking order, I know, because I was in that vein way a long time ago, 40-something years ago, when I was a high school teacher. You know, the top dog got to teach physics, whether they knew anything, whether they could spell physics or not. Whoever been there the longest got to teach physics, and then chemistry, and then biology, and then earth science, and then what was that one that science course that all the booger eaters used to take, one that they made to wear helmets. That was the pecking order. That was the pecking order, and it didn't matter who was good at it. That was the way it used to be. Well, you got to be more scientific than that if you want to keep your job. You need to put the teachers with the kids that get the best results, whether they've been there a day or a week or a minute. Remember, people are paying for this. You know, that you don't teach a soul. They're paying you to get results. Again, if you're one of those people that think that standardized test scores don't matter, get out now. This is not the business for you. They paid you to add value, to get scores, to get student achievement. That's what we do. What do they do at Jones Sausage? They make sausage. What do we do in school? We teach kids. That's all that matters. That's all that matters is student achievement. Yeah, but I didn't want to embarrass him. He'd been here the longest. Who cares? It's about talent. It ain't about time. That's part of what we're trying to figure out. In every school that I know of, somewhere in the building, whether they'll admit it or not, there's a big whiteboard that's gridded off, and you put stickies with teacher's name at the time what they're going to be teaching. Trick is whose name goes on that sticky and where does it go? And that can't be eeny, meeny, miny, mo. We ain't pulling them out of the hat. You know, what was the old gag on Andy Griffith? They were the fellow thought he was unlucky, thought he was a jinx, and so they rigged the drawing, and he pulled out the hat size rather than the number. I mean, you know, this is not a gag, folks. We ought not be pulling names out of the hat as to who teaches what kids. We need to be more scientific than that. That's the notion here. We're going to treat you to schedule a school legally, but not only legally, but in a way that gets the best performance and gives you the best chance of getting the growth out of those kids and getting the performance out of those kids that they deserve and that you need in order to stay employed. That's the notion here. Your job is to get achievement out of kids. You need a master schedule that works for you. What good does it do to come up with this wonderful school improvement plan based on the app sale that you did last semester and the app tell this wonderful staff development program for teachers to grow them? Then you don't align your school master schedule to that, or you don't put your budget behind it. How smart is that? And so let me share my screen here and we'll look at this. And so here's how I see it. Right here. This is the deal. The path to school improvement. The master schedule and the school budget are the cornerstones that support that school improvement plan. You've got to build a master schedule that gives you the best chance, puts the teachers in the best places to do that. And so there is a rationale to how you schedule a school. It's not eeny, meeny, miny, mo. First thing we have to do is we have to look, here are the things you're going to need. Your report card, your EVOS report or your growth, your school improvement plan, your master schedule, duty roster, supervision schedule. For those of you who don't know, and it's not an embarrassment if you don't, a duty roster is assignments during the day, like lunch duty, bus duty, car rider duty during the day. Supervision is for after school activities. Your teacher working conditions survey in South Carolina, that'd be your Cognia survey and your latest accreditation report. Those are the things that you're going to need. Sandra, you have a question?
Yes, where can we find the accreditation report?
From your
And
school, from your school principal.
Is it by school or by district?
No, it's by your school.
I didn't know we had one.
Every school is accredited. If you're not, then what we're looking for is the data about your school in terms of the external context. We're going to read that in task 1 in just a minute. What is the average income of the parents in your district? What's their average education? What is the history of the school? What is the history of the community? All of that is contained in the very first section of your last accreditation report contains that information. You can just copy and paste it rather than trying to put it all together yourself. Okay. That's what you need that for. Now, here is the rationale. And then again, this is integrated into task 1. We're going to read it in just a minute. Here is the rationale. This is the order in which you use to schedule school. This is not debatable. None of these are interchangeable. They have to be in this order every way, every time. And now, don't raise your hand and say, but you don't know an exception to this, by the way. I'll tell you before you raise your hand, you do not know an exception to this rationale. There is not one. This is how a school is scheduled, period. Number 1, federal programs come first, period. They are the most restrictive. They are there's the least amount of wiggle room. They are the most highly defined in terms of what you will and won't do. You must schedule all your federal programs first. And you say, but Dale, what are federal programs? I don't know what that is. Well, our handy dandy slide tells us what federal programs are. You may not have all of these. You may not have all of them. You may have all of them. But here's what they are. Your EC program, if you've got 504 for disadvantaged, and your intervention team, which is MTSS. That's all federal programs. You say, but those MTSS, that's local. That's state. That's not federal. It will be if they make one of these 2 programs, and so they get the same protections as these 2 programs. You understand that intervention team at the end of it is not the purpose of it. The purpose of an intervention team is to try to help kids. But at the end of that process, they may become one of these 2 groups of kids. So they get the law says they get the same rights as these 2. So we have to put them all together. Title I, are you a school? Title I school or a program? Does it matter? Oh boy, it matters. Oh boy, it matters. If you're a Title I school, Title I teachers, Title I funds, everybody can share everything. If you're a Title I program, Title I teachers can only have Title I kids in their class, and monies can only be spent on Title I kids, period. Well, Dale, how do you differentiate between the 2? Real simple. Percentage of free and reduced lunch. If you're over 80, you're a Title I school. If you're 50, and not over 80, then you're a Title I program. It can't be that much different. Well, one of my stories is this. This is absolutely a true story. If you head out 40, if I go up 77, of course, I'm not there tonight. I'm not at Lake Norman tonight. I'm in the western part of the state tonight. But if I were at my home in Lake Norman, I'd get on 77. I'd go straight up the states for about 20 minutes. Get on 40 and head east. Just right east, right through Winston-Salem, Greensboro, get to Raleigh. When you get to Raleigh, you go around the roundabout, the outer belt, and then all of a sudden 40 turns directly east and heads toward Wilmington. I mean, directly south toward Wilmington. What's the first road you pass on the right? Garner, Jones Sausage Road. What do they do at Jones Sausage? They make sausage. What do we do in schools? We teach kids. That's our core competence. You pass Jones Sausage, about halfway before you get to Wilmington, pretty good ride down the road there. You get to Highway 42. You get off on 42 and you head east toward Topsail Island. Now, the problem with that part of the world is your GPS won't even work. It's so far out in the sticks. I had to go to Chinkapin Elementary School out there. And I swear to you, I had to go get on a dirt road. They detoured me through a man's yard, and I went through the back of his carport down to get to the school. Can't make this up. You talking about nowhere. Phone doesn't even begin to work. GPS just spins. That's relevant to the story in that when I got there, I had to wait over an hour to see the principal to talk to him about the intern that I had there. But the bad part was I had to go back 2 weeks later to meet the new principal because the reason why I was delayed was that they were having a Title I audit. Now, I explained to you how hard it was to find the place and get there. What's the probability that they just picked that school at random to audit Title I? None. The reason why the audit team was there is the teacher had picked up the phone and said, I've got 20 kids in my class that are not Title I. What had the principal done? Well, it's real simple. All those 3rd grade teachers, and if you've ever been an elementary principal, and I have, all them 3rd grade teachers, which are just about the meanest teachers in the building, they all came to him mad as fire because She only had about 10 in her room and they had 30 in their room. They wanted to balance the loads. Well, if you are a Title I program, again, if you're a Title I program, if you're a Title I teacher, can you have regular ed kids in your classroom? No, that's spending federal funds. And so he forgot that federal law comes first and teacher input comes when? Last. He reversed the process and gave in to those nagging third grade teachers. You know, part of the reason I have no hair is because of those folks. I understand that. He gave in. And I had to go back 2 weeks later to meet the new principal. You don't misspend federal money but one time. And there is no abrogation. There is no, well, we'll put him on probation, or, well, if you misspend federal money, the only thing is they find you innocent, you keep your job, or they find you guilty and they fire you. That's the two options. If you spend knowingly or willingly misspend federal money. Now, he put non-Title I kids in a Title I class. I'd say that that's pretty intentional to misspend federal money. And guess who called and ratted him out that same day was the Title I teacher. She called Raleigh and said, I've got 20 non-Title I kids in my class. And they were probably there the next day. They couldn't have just picked that school at random. You couldn't find it at random. You needed a helicopter to find it. That's what we're talking about here. There is a way that you schedule your school. You don't get to pick. This is how it works. Again, we're building a legal master schedule, not just a master schedule. So our federal programs come first. Our state law comes second. And that's what we say. What is state law? That would be class size limits, highly qualified teachers, teacher licensure, days, hours, minutes. See, that's some of that. There we go with some of that report card stuff. Planning time, duty free time, teacher work days. All these things should be available at your school. That should be in your faculty handbook. Now, two things get transferred automatically. We used to have to send them, but two things happen every month. We turn in the principal's monthly report on attendance, which is how we get funded for schools, and we'll talk about that later. But the other is we have to send them a copy of our school activity report, which is our master schedule. And they're checking for these things right here. They're checking to make sure you don't have 40 in a room and 20 in another. They're making sure you don't exceed class size limit. They make sure that you have highly qualified teachers, or that the teachers in that room are licensed to teach that subject you've got them in. They check for days, hours, and minutes of instruction. They check to make sure teachers have the appropriate amount of planning time, duty-free time. All those things are checked through your school activity report, which is your master schedule, which has been uploaded into PowerSchool. So that comes second. We have to meet all those requirements next. Third comes our local. Third is our local. And local policy, these are the kinds of things we're talking about on local policy. Daily schedule, whether it's a block, flex, AB day, traditional, mosaic, hours of instruction in the elementary school, and these special programs, clubs, organizations, local assessments. You know, those things the local board decides on. Let me show you a bootleg copy of one of these. These are not for public consumption, by the way. So this one's got a little age on it. It has aged out. The superintendent that was there left, and so I can show it now. So if you look under, let's see, OMA task and prompts, I believe is where I hit it. Zoom session 1. Okay, so this is local board policy for elementary schools in Guilford County in 2015-16. And all schools align their work with strategic plan. They tell them what they want to do. You'll implement foundations and words their way with fidelity. You'll administer dibbles and assessments 3 times a year, and it tells them when and where. You'll have a bell schedule with 400 minutes, 6.6 a day, a minimum of 4 specials a week, how much balancing, literacy, it tells everything that you're going to do in terms of minutes of instruction. It has all these other things that you're going to do. They will give you this as a principal. They won't just assume that you know it or will be able to intuit it. You have to know, and they will tell you what the local board policy is on scheduling. Number 4 is your performance. Again, who should be teaching what? This teacher gets the best out of low kids. This one should be teaching chemistry rather than physics, or vice versa. The young kid should be teaching the physics. The old guy should be teaching earth science. Whatever it is, that we need to know who gets best results with what kids. And we need to put that into practice. And I know you remember that from last semester when Dr. Hamilton showed you EVOS, how that works, that certain teachers get better results with certain kids. And then teacher input comes last in the scheduling process. And that should just be information about students. They should maybe be in this group or that group, or, maybe we should bump them up a level to try to accelerate them and make them reach, or those kinds of things. It shouldn't be about, I want this one. I want the smart group. You get the dumb group because you haven't been here as long as me. No, we can't do stuff like that. So again, we have to understand the rationale for scheduling the school is this way and this way only, all the time, every time. Federal law and programs come first, then state law, then local board policy, then best practices, your performance data, who gets the best results, and then teacher input. In that order, every time, always, for a legal master schedule. Remember, we're building a legal one, not just a master schedule. We're building a legal one. That's what we're going to be doing this semester in this class. All right, so let's look at OMA 10. Pretty simple. The candidate research analysis, school context, internal and external. That's what we're talking about. That your accreditation, advanced ed, SACS, whatever accreditation that you have, will give the external context of your school. If you've got like a history of your school, or you can Google your community or whatever. We just want you to put your school in context. Is this a wealthy community? Is it a well-educated community? What is your community? What is the community that surrounds your school? What's it about? And then the internal is all these other things. And so all of your rules and structures, that would be your master schedule, your duty roster, and your supervision schedule. So you got to put those together. Equity and transparency, we're going to address that. How much input does your school improvement team have in building the schedule? How much do they have? And then we're going to ask you down here at the bottom, how much they have in the budgeting process. What good does it do? Who produces the school improvement plan, by the way? That would be the school improvement team. If they don't have any standing or stature in building the master schedule or building the budget, how likely is it that those two are going to support the school improvement plan? Not very. All right, Sandra, you have a question?
Yes, the contextual analysis, are we able to use the same information we used with the APSL and the APTEL and maybe add information to it? Is that okay to do?
Well, of course.
Okay.
We're not reinventing the wheel here. A lot of the things that you've done, you'll just add to it. So your school profile, and that's where I was talking about earlier. If your school profile includes all those kinds of things, then you're good to go. But a lot of times, we're going to need to know the relevant stuff, that puts your school in context. Do we need to be offering all vocational courses, or we need to offer all college prep courses, advanced courses, IBAP? What level do we need to be offering at this school? I was quite honestly, we one size doesn't fit everybody. We'd love for everybody to be able to go to Harvard, but that's just not the case. We need to know our clientele that we're dealing with so that we can plan accordingly. Equity and transparency, that means how much how much does your school improvement team get? How much influence or input do they get in building the master schedule and the budget? Because that's where equitably and transparency takes place. Because who's on that school improvement team? Community members, teachers, if it's secondary school kids. I mean, that's how you assure the equity, equity. We've looked at all these test scores. We know this group needs more help. That's what we're talking about. But if there's a reason why we have a school improvement team, and they're required by law to produce a school improvement plan, and that and the budget are public documents, by the way. So don't let somebody, when you have to ask for the school improvement plan for this or the school budget for when, a little bit later, don't let somebody tell you, oh, we don't put those out. Yes, they do. The law says you do. Those are public documents. And they have to be able to stand up to scrutiny from individuals to say, is this equitable? Are we putting all of our resources where we need to? Or are we making sure the rich get richer? That's what we're talking about, equitability and transparency. Does our school improvement team, do they have a voice in that master schedule and in that budget? And then you have to do an audit of all your exceptional children's programs, all your Title I programs. Let me say all your federal programs, which would include, again, Title I, EC 504, your intervention, English as second language. I don't care what initials you use, ELL, ELA, ELP, ESL. I don't care. If it's foreign language, that you got to do an audit of that. All of our federal programs, including CT, because what we're trying to figure out is, what are they supposed to get? An audit is trying to determine, this is what they get and this is what we offer. How do we narrow that gap if there is a gap? But this is what we've got to put in our schedule, because this is what the law says these kids supposed to get. Who pays for those teachers, by the way? Who pays for EC teachers? Does the state pay for those? Does the local pay for them? No. Federal government pays for those. That's why you have to listen to what they say. They pay, not only do they pay for the programs, they pay the teacher salaries as well. The feds have a big checkbook, but you got to follow their rules. They pay for everything. When they have a program, they pay for everything. That's why their rules are the most restrictive, and you've got to make sure that you follow them first, because they pay for everything. Everybody doesn't do that, but they pay. Not only do they pay for the program, they pay the teacher salaries as well. So that's why if you've got federal programs, they got to come first. So that's the things you need to do to gather up to do. And we'll talk more about task one next week. I've got examples in there. We got Dr. Robertson's note. Dr. Mark was a longtime principal, worked with me in Charlotte Mecklenburg in the way back. And so he's written you some notes just as a kindness. He's a good man. And so start putting all these things together for your task one. Remember, we got 2 weeks. We'll talk about it again next week. Don't want to overwhelm you tonight, but start dragging all your stuff together. Look at some of those examples. I'm going to call on Dr. Sain again. This is the benediction part of the service. You can probably hear Just As I Am playing in the background if you're an old Baptist like me. Dr. Sain, I want to let you close out tonight with the notion of the federal programs and their importance and the seriousness of those in public schools.
Yeah, just all that. The serious of it is that what they require, we must do. And one of the things that we as administrators sometimes do is we think we have to get it perfectly right in the beginning, and sometimes we let things slip and because we have so many things to do. But one thing that I encourage you all is, when you're developing master schedules as future leaders, is that you constantly analyzing it and you have the willingness and ability to change it. And yes, that is inconvenient for teachers. And we think it's inconvenient for students, but 9 times out of 10, students are resilient. They don't mind the change. It's teachers and it's us as the adults who struggle with the change. So if you ever get into a situation where your master schedule does not reflect federal needs, or you're not compliant with federal legislation, change the schedule. if it's day 2, if it's day 5, if it's day 10. I've seen so many principals that I've supported and coached over the past 5 years who just have knew things were wrong, but they didn't want to change it because they didn't want to upset their staff. Don't be that person. Always, I know you can debate whether that's what's always best for kids, but federal money rules, federal compliance rules, and so that trumps everything. So I don't want to end on that Debbie Downer of a note. Master scheduling can be fun. It can be as fun as you want it to be. For those who can think outside of the box with all the demands of schools today, I mean, you're going to be in a great position, but the master schedule sets the tone. You all are educators and you've all worked for principals who've had horrible master schedules. And it just is, it's the schedule sets the tone. And I'm glad Dr. Lamb starts the course out with the importance of the master schedule, because if you don't have a good master schedule, you don't have a good school year. You don't have compliance with federal programs, et cetera. So that's what the summers are for. Most districts are now going to where assistant principals are working 12 months, and it's just for that. So the principal and the assistant principal can figure out a master schedule and still get input from staff. So they're important. Put that at the top of your sticky notes or your notes for this school year. That makes a good assistant principal, is one who can, because as a principal, guess who created my master schedules, at least the template, my assistant principals, and then we work together to hammer out the details. So sharpen those skills.
Yeah. Thank you. And so, thank you, Dr. I need for everybody to understand the importance of master scheduling. And the last thing that I'll say, I hope that I've hit everything and nobody has any questions or any more issues. I want to close by saying this, and what Dr. saying, I want to amplify that. And I believe this since the first day that I was in the business, and the last day I'm in the business, I'll believe it then. And this is my 45th year. The person who builds the master schedule runs the school. That can be you as the principal and the administrative team, or it can be the guidance counselor. It's up to you. And so that's what I want to leave with you tonight. The person that builds the master schedule runs that school. All right. I've had a great time tonight. We always try to stay on time. We'll be back next week. We'll talk more next week about the OMA, where we're headed with it. But we've covered pretty much everything we're going to have to do tonight. We'll get a little more structure to it next week. We'll talk a little more about case studies, a little more in depth next week on those, and we'll cover our materials. Don't forget to get out and find your emergency plans. And so that should be it. And Alicia, you have a question to end us tonight?
Yes, I think somebody else had asked it in the chat too, but when are the discussion, is there a certain time this discussion posts are due, or we just do
Well,
it?
as I said, the standard in the Mels program is Sunday night at 9. But
Okay.
as long as you have them done by next Tuesday, don't show up next week for class not having done this week's assignment. Just have it done before you come to class next Wednesday.
And do we have to comment, like reply to our classmates, or just
No, I don't care what they think.
Okay.
Not at all.
Hey, Dr. Lamb, I have one more question.
Yes.
I've been looking ahead at the class and I've started asking my principal for things, but when it comes to the school budget, she is not giving up on that. What
Are
am I
you in North Carolina?
I'm in South Carolina.
All right. She still has to give it to you.
Okay.
Don't give up.
Okay.
She's legally required to give it to you.
She referred me to someone at the district office and they just gave me the generic thing that I can find online.
Yeah.
I sent mine that law that you sent me, and that worked.
Yep.
Can you email it to me?
That's North Carolina law.
Oh.
I'll have to send you the South Carolina law. You don't want to have to resort to law on them unless you have to. You'd like to build a relationship with these people first.
I really like her and she's giving me everything.
Well, that's what I mean.
To the
Let's not
budget.
hit her with the blunt instrument just yet.
I had tried several times.
Yeah,
and
but
had
yeah,
said,
exactly.
"Hey, this
Sarah
is
was
but
dead
she
ended, and
wouldn't
so I
budge.
said, all right, I handed her the stick. But I'd rather not do that just yet. See if you can work with her for a few more days and see if she'll come around. You know, what you've got to convince her of is that you're not going to run out and put it on social media and pillory her over how she spends local money. Now, there's not a lot, principals don't have a lot of discretion on federal or state money and district money, but now they do have discretion on how they spend their local budgets. And principals are always afraid that somebody finds out how to spend their money, that they'll get, you know, that some social justice warriors will start some social media movement, and then they'll get an acronym, a name like FUME, families, you know, outraged against this principal or whatever. And so principals are always a little bit weary of, you know, when you ask them for those kinds of things, but make sure that she understands that we're just checking to make sure that all that her budget shows federal money, state money, local and school money, that you understand that you have to look at all four of those. If you don't, you're probably going to get yourself in trouble if you can't monitor all four of them. That's all you're looking to make sure, is that somebody's keeping an eye on all the different budgets and the different codes. Because remembering, you can't mix those monies. Let me say that again. We'll talk about that later on. You can't say, well, I got $50 in this account and 75. I want to spend 100. Can I take? No, I'll just tell you right now, no. If you need to spend 100 and you've only got 50 in one account and 75 in another, then you don't get it. You don't get it, because you can't put them two together. We're not allowed to do that kind of stuff. And so you've got to have a system in your budget where you track each of those fund sources independently and individually. That's what we're trying to find out. If you don't do that, you won't last long. I'll just tell you right now. Your money or your honey, you know, diddling the help or misspending the money, they'll send you home quickly. If you can't track the different sources of money, if you just think it's all like, if you got, you know, if you got $2 in your front pocket and $2 in your back pocket, you got $4. Not in school. You got $2 and you got $2. You don't have $4. That's not the way it works with school money. You got to understand that. Every source has to be tracked, and it is not, it is independent, and it cannot collaborate or be joined with others. Not the way money works, unfortunately. That's why it's so hard to keep up with. So hard to keep up with school money. Everybody says, how come people keep getting fired over misspending school money? That seems like that'd be the easiest thing in the world. No, it's not. But smart principals design a budget, a system, whether they color code it or whatever, where they're able to delineate those funds and be able to track them all individually. And Dr. Sane can tell you there's 1,000 codes. 1,000 codes, you know, that you have to put on and spend it, but you've got to be able to track them all. You've got to be able to track them all. And that's what we're looking for. We're not interested in the dollar figures, but, you know, what kind of system are they using to keep up with their money? Kristen, you had a question?
Yeah, when I was talking to my principal about the budget, we had a little chart we were looking at, and it was talking about the 4 different components of money. And she was saying that she doesn't have one of those components that the district just takes out. I guess it's how much for salaries and things like that.
Yep.
Is that something that I'll
Don't worry about that, but we know that it's being tracked.
Okay.
That's exactly what we're most concerned about is every district doesn't work the same way. So like when we get to hiring, federal law, due process law says these are the 6 things that have to happen. And every district in North and South Carolina has to do all 6 of those things. But who does them varies from district to district. I worked in far western North Carolina and I had to do them all. I worked in Charlotte. I didn't have to do any of them. They all got done, but we had somebody that did them. The notion that Kristen is talking about here is some places they will take that responsibility to track that money themselves, and you don't have to worry about it. But you have to know that they're doing that. You can't assume that they're doing that and they were thinking you were going to do it. You know, if this was a business school course, we call that the Abilene paradox. What is the Abilene paradox? We ended up in Abilene in the summertime. Nobody in their right mind would go to Abilene, Texas in the summertime. I went because I thought you wanted to go, and you went because you thought I wanted to go. And that's how we ended up in Abilene in the summertime. Well, You thought I was watching the money, and I thought you were watching the money, and that's how we ended up broke and having to revert a bunch of federal money back to the feds or state money back to the state, because I thought you were watching and you thought I was watching. And I just kept on hiring teachers and didn't know that I was supposed to know how much I was spending. And I was just hiring teachers just right on, because I had, I had vacancies, and so I was just hiring right on. And then all of a sudden, there wasn't any money to pay them. We was in the hole. We got to know who's tracking each of those fund sources. That's the deal. Because it's easy to overspend. It's easy to miss. It's easier than you think it would be. It's easy to spend things incorrectly, to buy stuff with this fund, and you go out and I mean, Bocock Stroud, I use them because they've come out of business, was a famous sporting goods retailer in Charlotte, and they wholesaled to schools. They didn't care if you had a PO or not. They didn't care if your booster club didn't have enough money to buy those uniforms. If somebody ordered them, we're selling them. What you'll find is the vendors bear no responsibility. They'll sell you anything you want. They won't say, now, do you have the money for this? They'll type up the order and send it right on out, because they know eventually if they make enough stink, they'll get paid. That's a big problem in schools, is people ordering things and folks delivering stuff, and you don't really have the money to pay for it. You thought you did. You thought you could put a couple of different things together, or that's the notion here. So we're trying to track, with that budget, we're trying to track who's paying attention to this. Whose job is it to watch this fund or that money or that account balance or those codes? We need to know that. Just like when we start talking about hiring teachers, we need to know who does the background check, who does the reference calls, who makes sure that we set up their drug test, who does the curriculum check, who checks their transcripts, who does all that stuff. Somebody's got to do it all, but the question is who. And that's a lot of the things about school administration is like Dr. Hussain said, this is the practical application. This is the day-to-day stuff. There's you got to know. You can't assume, because, well, nobody told me I had to do that. That doesn't mean it's not your job to do, though. Just because nobody told you. They figured you was a grown person. You took the money for the job. They's paying you. You're supposed to know. And if you don't know, ask. If you can't remember, write it down. That's the way the world works. All right, we had another question that popped up from Sandra. You have one?
Yes, a quick question talking about, and hopefully, we won't be too much longer for you. Title I. When you talk about the students in the classroom, in the school, the Title I, how do they determine the Title I classification for the individual student? Is it solely based on the socioeconomic status of the population, or what? How do they classify the Title I student?
Dr. Hussain, that's your question. How did your district do it? I'll tell how ours did it.
So we based it off of their socioeconomic status and typically their academic performance in Lincoln County. So the two had to merge typically.
All right. So when I was in 2 low wealth counties, we did it only on economics. Only on economics when I was in 2 low wealth counties. When I was in a high wealth county, we did it on low wealth versus academic performance. And you could, that's kind of self-explanatory. And so, yes, that's the way we did it. That's one of my favorite stories of all time. If we don't have any questions, I'll end with that story. And this is what if my school's not accredited? Talk to your principal about that. Again, all we want to know is that we don't care about the accreditation. We're trying to find a place where we can find the external context of your school. What's the average income? What's the average education of your parents? What's the history of your school? We want the external contact. We don't don't need the accreditation report. We're only going to that because that's usually the easiest place to find the external context. But if you can find it somewhere else, that's fine with me.
Charlie Corral graduated from my middle school.
Oh,
Yeah, so
Charles.
I was gonna put that in my paper.
That's it. Yeah, that's
He
that's
started out in
something to
school
know.
newspaper,
That's in
yeah.
the way back. I mean, on the road to Charles Corral, y'all probably don't even know what that was.
I do.
I've got one better. Nina Simone graduated from my high school.
Oh, wow.
Now that is in the way back, folks. High school's not even there anymore. All right, so here's my story to end the evening about being clear, but federal programs. And so when I was a principal in Burke County, we had to do the calculations for free and reduced lunch. You need to find out in your district, you probably won't have to do that, but you never know. Usually that's taken care of now, but back in the way back, principals had to do that calculation. And you know, it's a sliding scale between how much money the family makes and the number of children that they have. Well, we had a non-English speaking population pretty heavy at that school, and the parent came in, and of course, all I could do was talk louder and wave my hands more. We really couldn't communicate. We had a language barrier problem. She didn't speak redneck and I didn't speak Hmong. And so we had, you know, we didn't communicate well, and she couldn't understand why I had adjudicated that her family got reduced lunch rather than free lunch. And finally, I said to her, now this is me being the knucklehead that I am, in order to get free lunch, you either would have to make less money or have more children. So guess what she showed up with 2 hours later? 2 hours. An infant, 2 hours later, in her arms, a swaddling baby, just like Moses from the basket. Now, I said to her, less money or more kids. She showed up 2 hours later with another kid. So free lunch it is for you. So those are some of the stories. That's absolutely a true story. When I was principal at Oak Hill, in the northern, heading towards Jonas Ridge, in Burke County, North Carolina, I absolutely told a Hmong lady, and she brought another baby 2 hours later. And so these federal programs, your budgets, all that, you need to know who's connected to what. You know, what is my role? What is my responsibility? You know, I need to take charge of this so that I can get the outcomes that I want. That's how school works. And every district is different in terms of who does what, where, and when. You need to find out what's going on at your place. That's the whole notion. Thank you. Now, I love questions. I'll stay with you all night. Y'all already figured that out. But every week, you know, we can have Q&A all you want to have. But I'm interested in this stuff, and I'm glad that you are, because this is how school runs. This is how you learn. But remember, we're not trying to persecute your school administration. That's not the point here, but we're trying to learn so that we'll know how to do when we get our opportunity, and how we can assist as well. So everybody have a good week. Try to get your first assignment done before class next week. Turn it into discussion board, and we'll be good. So everybody have a good week. Thank you for joining us tonight. Again, Dr. Sain, thank you for joining us, your expert ability with us tonight. We appreciate that as well. Everybody have a good week.